Welcome. I'm Anne McLean from the library's music division, and we are so excited to have Les Arts Florissants here tonight with Théotime Langlois de Swarte and Augusta McKay Thomas. Please welcome them. It's wonderful to have you here, and especially to be the first artist after this long pause and the shutdown. And we're glad to see all of you here. Les Arts Florissants is really a major creator of the early music universe, and with just an eminently distinguished performance tradition of 45 years. And you are both profoundly engaged in this ensemble and also Le Consort, two superstar ensembles that are galvanizing the world right now. We had the pleasure of hearing Augusta and hearing Le Consort here 2 years ago when Théotime could not be with us because he was going to have a beautiful little baby girl. We just showed us the pictures. So this program represents Vivaldi and his predecessors, music he would have heard and been influenced by. And so music he would have heard and been influenced by as a young artist. And it's part of just a massive Vivaldi emphasis for all of you. I would like to talk with you about how you arrived at your vision of Vivaldi. That's a big subject. And your alchemy in evoking all the drama and theatricality of his musical life in Venice opera and the great traditions of sacred music at San Marco and so forth. But just for the moment, what's it like to be on such a huge tour with such great musicians playing these works night after night?
So thank you so much for having us. It's such a pleasure to play here. And I have a great memory of here, even if I wasn't here the last time. And thank you, Augusta, for taking the violin score. And I was here a few months ago to try the instruments of the collection, the instrument that you can see behind the vitrine in a perfect English. And so it's very moving for me to come back because I had the joy to try the Chrysler's Guarneri del Gesù and the beautiful Stradivari also. And tonight I will play my Bergonzi. It's a great violin also, so you will not be, I hope. And so touring with Les Arts Florissants and with this crew built for this American tour is really a blessing. We had 25 concerts all over the country. Yeah, we did. 21 in last March and just 5 this time, but it feels like 25. No, actually it was also great to discover part of the USA that I was never been to. Maybe Augusta, you feel the same. And it's William Christie, the founder of Les Arts Florissants, who gave us this incredible passion about this music and this particular repertoire. And I think I speak on both of our. It was really incredible to learn to practice this music with him, and it's still such a joy to play with him. And it's also great to create this new ensemble. Is in this ensemble very well known with a lot of young players who are touring for the first time in the US, and so we bring the spirit of Les Arts Florissants, because the spirit of Les Arts Florissants is to show repertoire that was never played and to bring young talents to this music. So it's what we try to do.
You really grew up in Les Arts in a way as a teenager, right?
We play with each other since 10 years, I think. 10 or even 11 years or 12. Yeah, we're not that young.
And when you have a moment, you can all take a look at the scores in our foyer tonight, because we do have a 1725 first edition of the Four Seasons on display. Yes, they were rehearsing, so they didn't have a chance to see it. But we'll talk about the score and all these kinds of things. But in terms of how you put together these performances, one of the things that critics have talked about is how you go back and forth with improvisation during the concerts. And they mentioned you're sort of throwing the ideas, musical ideas, between you and Augusta and Hannah, who was also here with Le Consort and so forth, but just sparkling interplay and so forth. So I was curious, are there any improvisational moments noted in the score at all for the Four Seasons?
So there will be maybe a prelude for violin, but maybe not. It depends on the evening, on the mood, on the acoustic. Sometimes I'm playing some kind of an improvised prelude for solo violin, but sometimes not. So maybe I will play it tonight. Do you prefer me to play it? Okay. Nothing guarantee. Nothing for granted. But actually, I would speak more about spontaneity than real improvisation, because in the basso continuo there is this spirit of improvisation, because there is the figured bass with one note and with a figure. A number on the figured bass, and so you improvise in a way on the figure, but it's not really improvisation. But the prelude can be improvisation. But the very important thing about Baroque music is spontaneity and ornamentation. Ornamentation can be improvised, but we also found a lot of ornamentation by Pisendel, by one of the violinists who were playing a lot of Vivaldi's music. And in the Dresden library, there is huge amount of written ornamentations, because we are practicing a lot to find the greatest possible ways of ornamentating the music. So we have this idea of improvisation, but it's true that it's part of the Baroque language of the Baroque, but it's also spontaneity, the way to change dynamics, because we don't have written dynamics on the score. If you think of it, it's very different than the 19th century. As William Christie says, we are not playing the score, we are revealing the music.
And for the orchestra, we don't necessarily play the same dynamics every night. So we have nothing in our parts. And then for us, although we're not playing the improvisation of a solo part, we are picking up on what Théotime gives to us as far as dynamics and nuance and different phrasings, different tempi, and that changes every night. He keeps it very fresh. Depending on the acoustic, depending on our mood, depending on Théotime's mood. And so that spontaneity is very much there and alive every evening. So that's something you can listen out for.
And thinking, while we're talking about the score and what's in the score or not, I wondered about if you could talk about the poems, because people say they don't know if he wrote them himself or not. The sonnets, rather, which are this Four Seasons, the poems about them. But also, you can see amazingly in the score that's out tonight, he wrote individual lines, or he had lines written in which are now printed as part of the score. So talk about that a little bit and how they relate to the performance.
So Vivaldi never wrote, at this moment of history of music, a lot of composers wrote some treatises, like about harmonies, about the way to interpret. If you think about Couperin, there is l'art de toucher le clavecin. If you think about Rameau, there is 4 treatises about, je sais pas comment dire, don't know the word in English, but, and so Vivaldi, it's not this, but with the Four Seasons, in a way, is creating a way to learn how to play the Italian music, because of the imitation of the sound that you listen every day, and to try to give this to the sound of the violin. So imitation of birds, imitation, the way to express with the consonne, and so it's when there is the claquement de dents, the tooth,
chattering teeth.
Thank you so much. In the third movement, in the first movement of Winter, for me it's really a school of violin technique in a way. So he's doing this in a very artistic way with the sonnets, but is creating a testimony of a school of violin practice in Italy also. So it's one of the most patrimonial works by Vivaldi. It was written this way, it was written for the posterity in a way. So it's also why he had this huge success all over Europe and all over the history of music in a way, because it was rediscovered 100 years ago, and now it's one of the most recorded pieces ever.
And the most heard, and for us, growing up with this in the elevators and so on, it's bizarre that it is everywhere, and yet you have managed to make this a totally different piece. And I was thinking about Nicholas Harnoncourt's comments that this is experimental and even avant-garde music. I hadn't thought of it like that, but you make it just so mesmerizing in your attitude toward it.
Thank you. The concert is tonight. We have to keep.
And you say that there are so many facets that, surprisingly, even though it's so well known, there are things to explore. What have you enjoyed exploring about this, bringing it alive?
I mean, I think one of the wonderful things about this piece is hearing it played on historical equipment with the gut strings and the Baroque bow, and it's so much easier to speak the music, I guess we could say, and to have that all the different sound effects. It is very modern in a way that it almost uses sort of extended techniques, like you talk about the chattering teeth. We use ponticello, all these different effects. I mean, that's kind of crazy for Baroque music, and to do that on the gut strings and with the harpsichord, it just creates this beautiful effect, and it's really fun to explore that. And I think with Théotime, I mean, he's discovered such a wonderful way of really telling the story as he plays the music. So it's been super cool to experience that.
And for me, the avant-garde side of Vivaldi, it's really pre-impressionist, if you think of it. You relate your impressions, your remembrance, your feelings. And this is not particularly Baroque. The Baroque is about the affetti, like the different affects. So we have this with Vivaldi because we have the storms, we have almost the praying moments, we have also so many different effects. But in this spirit of listening, what's happening when you hear the stream and when you hear a dog barking very far, and this is an experience of life. So it's why it's so also universal, because we can all relate to this because we all lived with our sensations, and Vivaldi is trying to put your sensations in this score. So it's really powerful in a way.
And another thing that you've said in the notes that I've read here and there is that for you this is a work of a life of spirituality in music, and that's something too that struck me. I haven't seen that in relation to Vivaldi, and you talked about this music as a metaphysics of life and death.
Yeah. So, do you have 2 hours? So the story of birth and death. So for me, it's the 4 seasons. It's 1 year, but it's also representing life from the beginning to the end. Because in the first tonality, you have E major, and so it's a symbolism of birth, symbolism of renaissance, and after you have G minor. For me, it's like Apocalypse. It's like les versets du Jourdain. Sorry to say this in the Psalms, and I will practice my English, and next time I will do. And after you have at the end F minor. F minor, it's a very complex tonality and with 4 sharps. So, and the same third is used between E major and F minor. So between the beginning and the end of the 4 seasons, you use the same third. So you from G flat, mi da da, you go to fa la do, but it be da, and the G stays and becomes A flat. And this is the symbolism for me of death. But I have more, because in the second movement of Winter, there is 3 flats. Da 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 dum, bum. The sonnet is telling the story of you're at home and the raindrops, you see the raindrops outside. And for me, it's much more complex than this, because the 3 flats, it's a symbolism of the Trinity and a symbolism of praying. And so in Matheson, a treaty of the time of Vivaldi is like the tonality of praying. praying God, close relationship with God. So for the last season and the one of the last movement, I think it's very powerful to think of this and not think only about the raindrops, you know. The raindrops are there, but in a kind of different.
So interesting. I never have this. I knew about these ideas, and this reminds me of your company. They've done so much work on Vivaldi this year. So many different facets, like a whole series on Bach and Vivaldi at the BBC Proms, which is of course super distinguished. But thinking about what you just said, I was thinking about there are whole books written about Bach and numismatics or hermeneutics, or exactly these kinds of symbolisms and figure 9 and stuff. I didn't associate them with Vivaldi. So interesting. And then talk a little bit about the sacred music traditions that he would have known, like the beautiful motet that you open with, and how this is related to his family.
And so also a very important facet of Vivaldi, we like to think of Vivaldi as, Venice, the town with the carnival. But if you go to Venice, the first thing you notice is that there is a church in every street. It's really the first thing that catches you, and the water, of course. And so for me, it's very important to bring Vivaldi to the great heritage of composer that was in Basilica di San Marco. And if you think of it, Monteverdi was in Basilica di San Marco, after Legrenzi was in Basilica di San Marco, Maestro di Cappella. And Giovanni Battista Vivaldi, the father of Antonio Vivaldi, was playing in the orchestra of San Marco. So Vivaldi, as a young boy, was listening to the orchestra of San Marco, and so it's the power of Vivaldi. It's also that it brings to this ancient sacred style the repeated notes. If you think of it, it's da da dee dum, and this is Lamento della Ninfa. Da 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 is the tetrachord. Sorry, I'm losing you. Well, So it's based on a secular of music practice in Venice. It's not only, it's not from nowhere. There is no genius from nowhere. It's just based on a... Sorry.
You use the word exaltation in one of your notes, which is a great word for this music too. And then the Madrigalesca, Uccellini, is that one that how did you choose that piece to follow?
So the Madrigalesco, it's really composed in the style of San Marco for me, because there is the beginning, so it's a concerto for orchestra, and the beginning, it's exactly the same beginning that the beginning of the Magnificat of Vivaldi. And after we have the more instrumental moment, but it also sounds like a choir. And after the Bergamasca, and it's to show that the dance music was also the l'appanage, the specificity of the violin, because the violin was intended to be played with dancers at the 17th century, in churches and with dancers. So it's the two sides of the birth of violin. And the two sides are creating the concerto form, because there is this rhythmicity at the beginning of every movement. If you think of it, da-da-dum-pam-pa, it's a dance music, but you also have the lyricism that you can find in vocal repertoire, and of course the virtuosity. But the three combined, dance, singing, and virtuosity, it's the concerto form of the 18th century.
And the vocal aspect, the vocality of the writing is just incredible. And you think about all the operas and theaters in Venice, and I didn't know that there were two that were publicly available, at least two theaters there for opera. One, San Cazziano, I think, was one, but I thought they were all for noblemen and noblewomen and so on. So people, and he was associated with, his music would have been played at those too.
Vivaldi was an impresario. He was composing. He was not owning a theater, but he was the promoter, actually, of a theater called Teatro Sant'Angelo. And in this teatro, sometimes he was playing concertos, but mostly it was opera music.
So, thinking about your projects this year, which shows so many facets of Vivaldi's work, his work and his life, you have this great album, the Concerti per una vita, and so I'd love for you to talk to them about how you decided to do this recording and what some of the elements of it that show, as both you being virtuoso violinists, how you're showing his virtuosity as composer and violinist.
So the Concerti per una vita, it's because a musicologist brought me the last never recorded concerto by Vivaldi. So the last world premiere of concertos was the opportunity to record it, and so I wanted to tell the life of Vivaldi through his concertis. So this is the story of this project. And Augusta can speak about violin virtuosity because she's...
I think you'll hear plenty of it tonight.
Well, you talked, when you were here before, you talked a lot about the rise of the solo virtuoso violinist, and you have so many aspects of this in the work that you do now. So was he really one of the first to become a big star, as Paganini was later, in this way?
Well, the violin always held a very important virtuosic role. We were speaking about dance. Even in dance, you would have the dance masters. They were almost always violinists, and they would play these tunes for the dancers and have to have them right on the spot. So even from very early on, the violin was something that was used very virtuosically. And then, of course, it grew, and the traditions grew and grew and grew. But Vivaldi taught at an orphanage, and he taught these incredible, crazy concertos with very difficult passages to the young girls at that orphanage, who were wonderful virtuosos themselves, in a time when it was not necessarily allowed for a woman to play the violin and to be a virtuoso on stage. And I'm sure Théotime can tell you more about that tradition, but that part of the virtuosity of this music is very fascinating and wonderful. Yeah. Do you want to talk about the orphanage at all? Well, not really.
We play tonight.
Yeah.
So I had the chance to be invited to see the manuscript of the Conservatorio Benedetto Marcello in Venezia. So the Conservatory of Music, and there is the book of Anna Maria. Anna Maria is one of the main students of Vivaldi, and she wrote in her book every concerto dedicated to her, with every ornamentation and every cadenza. And in this book, it's very moving because it's not the hand of the composer, it's the hand of someone writing for herself, to play herself the concerti, and it's to keep this great music also. It's like a conservation also of the art that she could hear, so it's very moving.
Super interesting. I didn't realize there was such a book as of that available. It's in her hand, you say?
Yeah. And the hand also of another student, Chiaretta. At the end of the book, there was some cadenza, some place left for some cadenza, with a very interesting harmonic, harmonic propositions.
One of the pieces on the program is a grove from one of the concertos, and I saw that you had completed it. Is this a piece that other people have completed, or was this the first thing? Yeah.
It's the first time this piece, I think, will be played in Washington, D.C., because it was rediscovered 2 years ago. And so we finished the theme and variations. Vivaldi just wrote the theme and the first variation, and we decided to continue the variations because Vivaldi, as a violinist himself, he was not obligated to write every variations because he was improvising. But we can improvise on this theme, but it's also nice to have some respect for this work and to try out to be the most precisely close to the Vivaldi style.
There are just so many things to talk about. It just can go on and on. One other thing that interested me was somewhere I was reading that William Christie does not expect people to be playing in a homogeneous sound throughout, that he's fine with people, individuals, sometimes sticking out a little bit of the fabric of the music. That was interesting to me too. Is that something you think about these days when you play?
I mean, I think that's one of the wonderful things that William Christie has taught us and brought to his orchestra, is that, it sounds so cliche, everyone has a voice, but he really, he's really so talented for finding wonderful musicians and seeing exactly who they are and what their talent is. And he wants as many different musicianships and styles in his orchestra as possible, because he feels that brings a wide range to his canvas. And I think that's something we try to continue, this idea that everyone should be playing their guts out on stage, especially, no pun intended, especially in such a small formation. And it really is chamber music in a way, in that aspect. So in that sense, it's different from the modern orchestra, where you want to blend. Of course, we want to blend as well, but everyone gets to have their personality. And this music also is just screaming for that. So I think it works really well.
I love this. I just, the concept is so great. So what is next? I know this has been a massive Vivaldi focus. What is next for you? Do you have any big projects that are down the road there?
So yes, I will do a ballet in France with 24 dancers about the relationship between Bach and Vivaldi. So there will be the Bach concerto, pam 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 pa ba da ba da ba da ba dum pam, and I really thought that with dancers it could be super powerful and interesting. And there will be also the 813 concerto that you will hear tonight, one of the first concerto of Vivaldi that we will play, and it was transcribed by Bach, so it's telling the story of their relationship, and a lot of different projects.
And you're conducting now some more than...
Yeah, I just conducted in Paris at the invitation of Louis Langlois. He's a French, almost American conductor. Maybe you know him. Because he conducted Cincinnati Orchestra for years, and the Met, and so many orchestras. And so we shared a production of Iphigénie en Tauride, Gluck, from Gluck, and it was a great project with my orchestra. And then next month, in 3 weeks, so in every plane, I'm working on the Messiah because I will conduct the Messiah in 3 weeks. So I'm like, oh, unto us a child is born, and I'm like in the airport with my luggage, unto us a child is.
Oh, a little bit of everything. So, well, I think many of the people here might have a question, and we know you guys need to warm up and so on, but maybe a few questions from the...
Hello.
Is that okay? Yeah.
And Augusta will do a great tour in Australia at the invitation of the Australian Brandenburg Orchestra.
And actually, it's on the concertos of this Anna Maria student of Vivaldi's, so that's very cool.
Great.
Nice little connection.
Wonderful. And so it's sort of nonstop, but you said you have a foot on both sides of the pond. Do you still do that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not French.
She is right now. No, you have.
No, not yet. Don't jinx it. I will be.
But she's almost. She speaks French like a French, really.
So I go back and forth. Yeah.
All the time. So what? Maybe a few questions from you guys.
Anyone?
Anybody? Yeah, here's one right here. Yeah.
I have a question about your interpretation, very spiritual interpretation of life and death in the, Four Seasons.
Yeah.
Do you think that was something that Vivaldi was thinking about, or is that something?
Yeah, I'm sure he thought about it, because there is the symbolism of the tonalities and la forme cyclique. The cyclic form, it's also telling this story, because you're beginning, you go to the end, and after the end there is like, so it's part of the, and also death, it's always here in the theme of the sonnets. Always, it's like the fear, death. Also, there is the moment where there is so many aspects of it, but there is the moment where they catch finally the prey in the hunt, and there is the soul of the of the beasts who are going to heaven. Da di do mi fa sol la di do di da. Sorry, I play violin better than I sing. I hope.
Anyone else? No?
There's a number of Americans in Les Arts Florissants. Of course, William Christie is American-French, and he teaches at the Juilliard School, which is where he scouted me. So he has invited over a few Americans, and yeah, in this group now today there are 4. Yeah. So.
All from major conservatories, Curtis.
I don't think we have anyone from Curtis, but yes, we all have strong training.
From Juilliard.
Yeah, mostly from Juilliard, exactly.
Did you... Sorry.
No, I don't think so. No. But we love Peabody.
It says here that this is usually performed with vocals, but it says an ensemble. It says Les Florissants.
Yeah. The ensemble Les Arts Florissants usually is the main repertoire of Les Arts Florissants. It's more vocal.
That doesn't happen in Vivaldi.
In Vivaldi composed a lot of music for opera and also for the sacred works, so a lot for choir. But tonight it will be only a concerto, and the concerto there is never one voice with concertos.
Anyone else?
Maybe that's okay for now? Yeah? This will give you guys a chance to rest up and so on. It's just so wonderful to have them here, and we feel give a special applause. You're going to be thrilled by this concert. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.